The year is 1348. A chill wind sweeps across the ravaged lands of Europe, carrying with it not only the pestilence of the plague, but also a deeper, more primal fear. Whispers of the unquiet dead echo in the shadowed corners of villages, tales of corpses rising from their graves with an unholy thirst. In the small village of Rosenfeld, nestled deep within the Black Forest, death has become a frequent visitor. But the recent deaths are different, marked by a disturbing lack of blood and strange wounds on the necks of the deceased. Agnes, the village healer, senses a darkness that goes beyond the touch of the plague. Fear grips the hearts of the villagers. Old wives' tales of blood-sucking demons and reanimated corpses resurface, fueled by the priest's warnings of divine punishment and the palpable sense of dread that hangs in the air. Agnes, ever skeptical of superstition, begins her own investigation. She examines the bodies, searching for rational explanations, but the evidence whispers of something far more sinister than mere illness. Father Michael, the village priest, sees the deaths as a sign of God's wrath, a punishment for the sins of the people. He preaches repentance and urges the villagers to seek solace in prayer and confession. Agnes and Father Michael clash over the cause of the deaths and the appropriate response. She advocates for practical measures, quarantine, hygiene, and herbal remedies, while he insists on prayer and exorcism. The tension between faith and reason hangs heavy in the air. Meanwhile, in the relative tranquility of the Benedictine monastery of St. Michael, Brother Thomas delves into the ancient texts, seeking answers to the growing unease that grips the land. He is a scholar, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a desire to understand the world through the lens of both faith and reason. He stumbles upon accounts of strange beings, creatures of the night who prey upon the living, draining their life force and leaving behind only empty husks. The old legends speak of rituals and remedies, of garlic and hawthorn, of consecrated ground and silver charms. Brother Thomas is torn. He is a man of faith, yet the rational part of him struggles to reconcile these fantastical tales with the teachings of the Church. But the growing panic in the villages, the palpable fear in the air, forces him to consider the possibility that something truly unnatural is at work. Back in Rosenfeld, Agnes continues her efforts to protect the villagers, relying on her knowledge of herbs and folk remedies. She prepares protective amulets, performs ancient rituals, and tries to calm the rising hysteria. But the fear is reaching a fever pitch. One night, a villager claims to have witnessed a horrifying sight, a corpse rising from its grave, its eyes burning with an unholy light. The vampire panic has begun. Agnes, armed with her knowledge and her courage, prepares to face the darkness that threatens to engulf her village, unaware of the forces that are gathering in the shadows, and the role she is about to play in the unfolding drama. Within the hallowed walls of the monastery, Brother Thomas sought solace and understanding in the ancient texts. The vampire panic, fueled by ignorance and fear, demanded a response rooted in knowledge and reason. He meticulously examined accounts of early Christian burial rites and pagan customs, searching for the origins of the rituals now employed to prevent the dead from rising. The air hung thick, with the scent of aged parchment and forgotten lore. The monk recoiled slightly from the graphic descriptions of exhumation and corpse mutilation, a stark reminder of the brutal reality behind the superstitions gripping the land. He questioned the necessity of such violence in the eyes of God. Meanwhile, on his estate, Lord Stephen surveyed his domain. The land, once bountiful, now suffered under the weight of disease and fear. The vampire panic had crippled the already fragile economy. His steward presented the accounts, a bleak tally of dwindling harvests, deserted fields, and exorbitant expenses for protective measures against the undead. Fear, it seemed, was a costly commodity. In the village, Agnes prepared her remedies. Garlic, hawthorn, and other traditional protections against evil were in high demand. She understood the fear of her people, but she trusted in the wisdom passed down through generations. She distributed her potions and amulets, offering comfort and practical aid to those afflicted by grief and terror. She believed in her craft and in the power of the old ways. Brother Thomas stumbled upon descriptions of illnesses mirroring the supposed signs of vampirism. A persistent cough, weight loss, and pallid skin. Were these not the symptoms of consumption, a disease ravaging the land? Lord Stephen attempted to quell the growing unrest amongst his serfs. Accusations flew, fueled by fear and suspicion. He struggled to maintain order, knowing that panic could be as deadly as any monster. Agnes discovered evidence of a recent exhumation in the village cemetery. The desecration of the dead, driven by fear, angered her. She knew such acts would only breed more terror. Brother Thomas prayed for guidance, torn between the church's teachings and the unsettling truths he unearthed in the ancient texts. How could he reconcile faith with the rising tide of superstition and violence? As darkness fell, Lord Stephen braced himself for the challenges ahead. The storm was not only brewing in the sky, but also in the hearts of his people. The shadows of blood were growing longer, and the fate of his estate hung precariously in the balance. Agnes surveyed the village, the air thick with unspoken fear. The recent deaths had stirred old anxieties, and the whispers of vampires grew louder with each passing day. Her duty was clear, to protect her community using the knowledge passed down through generations. At the edge of the graveyard, Agnes prepared the grave. Hawthorn, a powerful ward against evil, would guard the deceased. She muttered ancient prayers, her voice a low hum against the rustling leaves, ensuring the spirit remained at rest. Brother Thomas, within the monastery's quiet library, continued his research. He transcribed accounts of ancient burial practices, noting the similarities and differences between the church's rites and the folk traditions that now surfaced with such vehemence. Understanding the past, he believed, was key to calming the present. Lord Stephen faced his worried serfs. Fear had gripped them, impacting their work and loyalty. He needed to quell the panic, but also acknowledge their concerns. He promised an investigation into the strange occurrences, a promise he knew he had to keep to maintain order. Back in her cottage, Agnes brewed a potent concoction, a blend of vervain, wolfsbane, and rowan berries. It was meant to ward off not only physical ailments, but also the unseen forces they feared. She knew her remedies were their only defense against the encroaching darkness. Driven by fear, some villagers defied both church and lord, taking matters into their own hands. A newly buried body was exhumed under the cold light of the moon, their actions fueled by desperation and the hope of finding proof of vampirism. Agnes, summoned to the scene, examined the exhumed corpse. The signs of decomposition were evident, though misinterpreted by many as proof of unnatural life. She knew she had to tread carefully, balancing their fears with the truth she understood. Brother Thomas immersed himself in ancient medical texts, desperately seeking answers. He sought to understand the physical processes of death, hoping to offer a rational explanation to counter the growing hysteria. Lord Stephen, enraged by the villagers' defiance, confronted them. The exhumation was not only sacrilegious but a direct challenge to his authority. He knew he had to punish them, but also understood the fear that drove their actions. Agnes patiently explained the natural process of death and decay to the frightened villagers. She described the bloating, the discoloration, the release of gases, all natural occurrences, yet terrifyingly misinterpreted. She sought to replace fear with understanding. Brother Thomas, inspired by Agnes's approach, diligently recorded her knowledge in his journal. He began to see the value in folk remedies, understanding that faith and reason could coexist, offering a more complete understanding of the world. Lord Stephen watched as the body was reburied, the fear slowly beginning to subside. Agnes's knowledge, combined with the church's rituals, had brought a fragile peace. He knew the panic might return, but for now, a sense of order had been restored to his troubled lands. Lord Stephen paced the stone floor, the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. The whispers of vampires had spread like wildfire, fueled by fear and ignorance. He needed to find a way to calm his people before the panic consumed them all. Agnes knew that logic was no match for fear. She offered the villagers what comfort she could, dispensing garlic and hawthorn branches, traditional remedies against the perceived evil. But even she could feel the unease growing. A letter from a neighboring lord demanded action. The rumors of vampirism were affecting trade and stability. Stephen knew that inaction would be seen as weakness, but he hesitated to embrace the brutality that others were advocating. In the relative calm of the monastery, Brother Thomas delved deeper into the historical accounts of similar panics. He sought to understand the roots of the fear, hoping to find a path to reason amidst the growing hysteria. "I understand your fear," Lord Stephen announced, his voice echoing across the square. "But we must not succumb to panic. We will investigate these deaths, but we will do so with reason and justice." Agnes examined the sick, searching for signs of illness, not vampirism. She knew that many of the symptoms attributed to the undead could be explained by earthly ailments, exacerbated by poor sanitation and malnutrition. Brother Thomas uncovered accounts of exhumations and post-mortem examinations, rituals designed to identify and destroy suspected vampires. The descriptions were gruesome, a testament to the depth of human fear. The village priest urged Lord Stephen to take a firm stance against the perceived evil. He argued that the church's authority was being undermined by the growing hysteria, and that decisive action was needed to restore order. Knowing the limits of reason, Agnes continued to offer the villagers traditional protection. She prepared amulets and recited ancient incantations, hoping to provide a tangible sense of security against the unseen threat. Rumors swirled around the latest death. Whispers pointed to a young woman, recently arrived in the village, as the suspected vampire. Fear fueled suspicion, and the villagers began to turn on one another. "We will exhume the body," Lord Stephen declared, "but we will do so under my supervision. There will be no mob violence, no reckless accusations. We will seek the truth, and we will do so with justice." Agnes watched, knowing that whatever they found in that grave, the fear would likely remain. The seeds of panic had been sown, and they would be difficult to eradicate. Brother Thomas traced the faded ink of a 12th century manuscript. The text described various signs of the undead: a ruddy complexion despite illness, a body that refused to stiffen after death, and blood seeping from the mouth. He knew these could easily be explained by natural causes: the imperfect art of embalming, the effects of decomposition, or even undiagnosed diseases. Yet fear rarely listened to reason. Agnes pressed her hand to Alara's fevered brow. The girl's breathing was shallow, her skin unnaturally pale save for the bright red spots on her cheeks, a telltale sign of the bloody flux. But fear had already taken root in the village. Whispers of a vampire's curse followed her every move. Lord Stephen watched as villagers began to barricade their doors. The sickness was spreading, and with it, a primal fear. He knew he had to act decisively, but how could he quell superstition with logic when even he felt the unease creeping into his own heart? The monk understood the body's secrets better than most. He knew that blood could pool after death, creating the illusion of a fresh corpse. That bloating and skin discoloration were natural processes, not signs of demonic animation. But explaining this to frightened peasants was a task akin to emptying the ocean with a spoon. Agnes mixed garlic, known for its antiseptic properties, with other potent herbs. She knew it wouldn't cure the bloody flux, but it might ward off the fear. She also prepared a strong tea of willow bark to alleviate Alara's fever. Folk remedies against both sickness and superstition. Alara suffers from a fever, not a vampire's curse, Lord Stephen declared. Agnes is tending to her. I will not tolerate any talk of exhumations or violence. Anyone caught spreading such rumors will face the consequences. His words were met with uneasy silence. Brother Thomas studied burial rites from different regions. Some prescribed burying the dead face down to prevent them from rising. Others advocated for placing stones in the mouth or severing the tendons. He saw in these practices a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable, to impose order on the chaos of death. Agnes knew that Lord Stephen's words might not be enough. The villagers were scared, and fear could drive people to do terrible things. Armed with her knowledge and a thorny branch, she would protect Alara, one way or another. Lord Stephen patrolled the village with his guards, the flickering torchlight revealing frightened faces peering from behind barred windows. He had doubled the watch, hoping to deter any rash actions. But he knew that fear was a powerful enemy, one that could easily overwhelm even the strongest defenses. Brother Thomas diligently recorded his observations. A ruddy face may signify not undeath but a fevered state, bloated flesh, not a surfeit of blood but the gases of decomposition. He hoped that one day reason would prevail over superstition, but for now he felt like a lone voice crying in the wilderness. Alara coughed weakly, her eyes glazed with fever. Agnes squeezed her hand, offering a silent promise of comfort. She knew the girl's chances were slim, but she would fight for her, against both the illness and the darkness that threatened to consume the village. As dawn broke, painting the sky with streaks of gray and pale orange, Lord Stephen remained vigilant. The night had passed without incident, but the underlying tension remained. He knew that the fear hadn't vanished, only retreated, waiting for the next sign, the next omen, to ignite the panic once more. The fear had reached a fever pitch. Accusations flew like poisoned arrows, and the village, once a place of simple community, turned into a hunting ground. The old woman, Alara, was frail and pale, weakened by a winter cough, an easy target for the villagers' mounting hysteria. Stephen watched the unfolding chaos from his manor, a sense of dread settling in his stomach. He knew that unchecked fear could be more dangerous than any imagined monster. He tightened his grip on the window ledge, the cold stone a stark reminder of his responsibility. Drawn by the reports of escalating panic, Brother Thomas arrived in the village, a lone figure against the backdrop of fear. He carried with him not weapons or accusations, but the weight of knowledge and a deep-seated hope for reason. "She is just an old woman," Agnes shouted, her voice cutting through the angry murmurs. "Her cough is from the damp winter air, not from feeding on your blood." She knew her words might be in vain, but she could not stand by and watch innocence be consumed by paranoia. The commotion drew Lord Stephen from his manor. He could not allow the village to descend into complete anarchy. He marched towards the mob, his authority his only weapon against the rising tide of fear. Brother Thomas watched, a silent observer, as the drama unfolded. He recognized the desperation in the villagers' eyes, the genuine fear that fueled their actions. He knew he had to find a way to reach them, to offer them a different path. With Lord Stephen's intervention, Alara was spared, for the moment. Agnes took her back to her small cottage and began to treat her cough, using the remedies passed down through generations. She knew that fear was a sickness too, one that could be just as deadly. Stephen addressed the villagers, promising order and protection. He spoke of reason and restraint, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The fear had taken root too deeply, poisoning their minds and hearts. Brother Thomas sought an audience with Lord Stephen, hoping to find common ground. He spoke of his research, of the ancient texts that offered explanations for the signs attributed to vampires. He hoped to appeal to Stephen's sense of reason and logic. Agnes continued her work, gathering herbs and preparing remedies. She knew that the fight against fear was a long and arduous one, but she refused to surrender to the darkness. She would protect her village, one herb, one prayer, one act of kindness at a time. Stephen found himself drawn to the family crypt, a place of cold stone and silent memories. He wondered what his ancestors would think of the chaos that had engulfed their land. He felt the weight of their legacy upon his shoulders, a burden he was not sure he could bear. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of hope, Brother Thomas and Agnes walked towards the church. They came from different worlds, different beliefs, but they shared a common goal: to protect the innocent and to bring light to the darkness that had descended upon the village. Their unlikely alliance was a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming fear. Brother Thomas pored over ancient texts, seeking a rational explanation for the escalating panic. He cross-referenced accounts of supposed vampirism with documented cases of disease and unusual burial practices, hoping to find a common thread. Agnes continued her work, administering traditional remedies and performing burial rites passed down through generations. She understood the fear gripping the villagers, but sought to ease it with practical measures, rather than fueling the hysteria. Lord Stephen struggled to maintain order in his domain. He addressed his serfs, urging them to remain calm and trust in his leadership, promising protection while secretly fearing his authority was waning. Driven by a need to understand, Brother Thomas decided to seek out Agnes. He hoped her knowledge of folk traditions, combined with his scholarly research, might offer a new perspective on the unfolding crisis. Agnes continued her healing work, tending to the sick and comforting the fearful. The surge in illness, likely exacerbated by the ongoing famine and poor sanitation, only added to the vampire hysteria. Brother Thomas arrived at Agnes's cottage, seeking her insights. He knew the church often dismissed folk remedies, but he believed her practical experience could be invaluable. Inside the cottage, Brother Thomas and Agnes shared their knowledge. He presented his research on burial practices and accounts of supposed vampirism, while she explained the traditional methods used to ward off evil spirits and protect the dead. Lord Stephen witnessed the growing unrest. Despite his attempts to quell the fear, the villagers, fueled by superstition and paranoia, were preparing to exhume a body suspected of vampirism. Hearing of the planned exhumation, Brother Thomas and Agnes rushed to the cemetery, hoping to intervene before the situation escalated. Lord Stephen argued with the villagers, attempting to dissuade them from desecrating the grave. But fear had blinded them, and his authority was rapidly eroding. Brother Thomas and Agnes arrived at the cemetery just as the villagers were about to mutilate the corpse. The air was thick with tension, and the scent of fear hung heavy in the air. Brother Thomas, using his position and knowledge, attempted to reason with the crowd, explaining the natural processes of decomposition and the dangers of spreading disease. Agnes prepared to show them the herbs that could protect them, hoping to offer a tangible solution to their fear. The fate of the village hung in the balance, dependent on whether reason could triumph over superstition. Fear had gripped the village. The recent death of Thomas, a young farmer, had been immediately attributed to vampirism. Villagers demanded an exhumation, convinced he had risen from his grave. Lord Stephen, ever mindful of maintaining order, reluctantly agreed to the exhumation. He understood the potential for chaos if the villagers' fears went unaddressed, even if he found the entire ordeal distasteful. Brother Thomas arrived, hoping to bring a semblance of reason to the proceedings. He carried his notes on death and decomposition, intending to offer a counter-narrative to the rampant superstition. The sight of the body was gruesome. The natural processes of decomposition were mistaken for signs of vampirism. The swelling, the discoloration, the purging of fluids. Gasps of horror rippled through the crowd. Agnes, though familiar with death, felt a pang of sorrow. She knew Thomas in life and suspected his death was related to the pestilence. She looked for signs of illness and tried to ignore the vampiric interpretations. Brother Thomas, seizing the moment, began to speak. He explained the stages of decomposition, the bloating caused by gases, the discoloration due to blood settling, the purging of fluids. He spoke of earthly processes, not supernatural horrors. Lord Stephen listened. He was a man of practicality, but even he felt the weight of the collective fear. He knew that reason alone might not be enough to quell the panic. "Lies," a villager cried out. "He's trying to protect it. We must stake him before he rises and claims more victims." The crowd surged forward, their fear overriding reason. Agnes stepped forward, a sprig of hawthorn in her hand. "He speaks the truth," she said, her voice firm. "Death is a natural process. Fear will only lead to more death." Lord Stephen raised his hand. "Enough," he commanded. "We will not descend into barbarity. Brother Thomas speaks of knowledge and Agnes of wisdom. We will heed both. The body will be reburied and we will pray for Thomas's soul." As the first rays of dawn broke, Thomas's body was reburied. The panic had been quelled for now, but Brother Thomas knew the fear lingered, a shadow lurking just beneath the surface. Agnes, knowing the power of folk remedies and the depth of ingrained beliefs, continued her vigil, preparing herbs and strengthening protections. The shadows of blood still lingered, and she knew the fight against fear was far from over. Brother Thomas meticulously compared accounts from different regions, noting the common threads: failed harvests, unusually harsh winters, and outbreaks of disease that often preceded the vampire accusations. He wondered if the fear was merely a symptom of deeper societal woes. Agnes knew the desperation of the villagers. The crops had failed for the third year running, and hunger gnawed at their bellies. The wealthy still had food, but the poor were left to starve. This imbalance, she suspected, fueled the unrest and made them susceptible to blaming supernatural forces. Lord Stephen struggled to balance his books. The dwindling harvests meant less tax revenue, making it difficult to maintain his estate and provide for his people. He knew the growing discontent could easily spill over into rebellion, and the vampire panic was a convenient distraction for some. A charismatic preacher arrived in the village, stirring up religious fervor with his fiery sermons. He spoke of divine punishment for their wickedness and pointed to the recent deaths as evidence of God's wrath. His words resonated with the fearful villagers, who sought an explanation for their suffering. Brother Thomas observed the preacher's performance with growing unease. He recognized the power of his words to sway the masses, but he feared the consequences of such unchecked zeal. He worried that the preacher was exploiting their fear for his own gain. Agnes clashed with the preacher's followers, who demanded she abandon her traditional methods and embrace his fire and brimstone approach. She refused to be swayed by their fear-mongering, clinging to the knowledge passed down through generations of healers. Lord Stephen saw an opportunity in the preacher's popularity. He believed he could use the religious fervor to solidify his own power and quell any potential unrest. But he also recognized the danger of unleashing such powerful forces. Fueled by the preacher's words, the villagers descended into a frenzy. They formed hunting parties, armed with torches and pitchforks, determined to rid their community of the perceived vampiric threat. Fear turned into a weapon, and anyone suspected of being a vampire became a target. Brother Thomas intervened, attempting to reason with the mob. He pleaded with them to remember their Christian values and to resist the urge to violence. But his words were drowned out by the chanting and the cries of the enraged villagers. Agnes risked her own life to protect those falsely accused of vampirism. She sheltered them in her home, offering them comfort and reassurance. She knew that the mob was driven by fear, not by truth, and she refused to participate in their madness. Lord Stephen, seeing the situation spiraling out of control, confronted the preacher. He demanded that he use his influence to restore order to the village and to quell the violence. He threatened to banish him from his lands if he refused. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the land, Brother Thomas knelt in prayer, seeking guidance from above. He knew that the village was on the brink of collapse, and he desperately hoped that reason and compassion would prevail before it was too late. The fever of fear began to break. The spring thaw, along with it, brought a lull to the vampire panic. Brother Thomas, ever diligent, continued his chronicle, seeking to understand the events that had transpired. Agnes, her hands calloused but gentle, tended to the sick and weary. Her remedies, once viewed with suspicion, were now sought after with renewed respect. The practical needs of survival overshadowed the fantastical fears. Lord Stephen, burdened by the memories of the past months, focused on restoring order and prosperity to his lands. The fields needed tending, the people needed stability, and he understood that fear was a luxury they could no longer afford. Brother Thomas visited Agnes, seeking to understand the enduring power of folk remedies. He realized that even in the face of scientific understanding, the traditions held a vital place in the community's healing process. Lord Stephen, mindful of the damage caused by unchecked panic, implemented new measures to improve sanitation and food distribution. He spoke of the importance of community and the dangers of succumbing to fear. Brother Thomas continued his research, meticulously documenting the real-world diseases that had been misinterpreted as vampirism. He hoped that future generations would be better equipped to understand the natural world and resist the allure of superstition. Agnes trained a young apprentice, ensuring that the knowledge of traditional healing practices would not be lost. She understood that these skills were essential for the well-being of the community, especially in times of hardship. Lord Stephen reformed the estate's policies, ensuring fairer treatment for his serfs and investing in infrastructure improvements. He recognized that a healthy and prosperous community was the best defense against future outbreaks of fear and unrest. Brother Thomas finished his chronicle, a testament to the power of fear and the importance of reason. He hoped that his work would serve as a warning to future generations, reminding them of the dangers of unchecked superstition. Agnes continued to serve her community, her knowledge and skills valued more than ever. The vampire panic had subsided, but the need for healing and compassion remained constant. Lord Stephen looked out over his lands, a renewed sense of hope filling his heart. The scars of the panic remained, but so too did the lessons learned. The community had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, more resilient. The shadows of blood faded, but the memory lingered. The vampire panic served as a stark reminder of the power of fear, the importance of knowledge, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The lessons learned would be passed down through generations, a cautionary tale against the darkness of ignorance and the enduring light of reason.